Dane, we like to have fun here, man. Me and Brian are gonna fight you in about 10 minutes. But I do have a general question. Got a general question, but me and Brian gonna throw some hands at you in a little bit. But I just want to ask you this, right? There's a lot of Cowboy fans watching us right now, okay? And you've been studying this thing up and down. This is an easy question for you, Dane. Some Cowboy fans want to tank. They just want to go ahead and lose and get the best guy they possibly can, right? Some Cowboy fans think that you should just go win the games just no matter what. Let me ask you this, Dane. What's the sweet spot that the Cowboys and Cowboy fans should want to be in where you can possibly win some games, get some good morale, build culture, but you can get a dude, an elite top-tier dude? Where's, in this class here, Dane Brugler, where's the last dude run out? Right around what range?
I think that's a fascinating question because it's so different from team to team. When you kind of ask and get an idea from different teams about how they view this class, there is one player in this class that is going to go, or that most teams feel comfortable with, is going to be a top 5 pick, and then everybody else, this might be the most polarizing draft I've ever been a part of, because one team's number 2 player could be another team's number 15 player. Like, it is all over the map, and it's really interesting because I think there's going to be more just chaos in this draft than we've seen in most other drafts. Because going up until in past years, we have a good idea of how things are going to play out. This year, I know it's early, but even when we get to March and April, I still feel like it's going to be all over the place because teams are so split on this class. And part of that is because it's not a great class. I mean, it's good, but it's not great. I think Travis Hunter is the only player in this draft who would have went in the top 10 last year. I feel very confident saying that, and that's an opinion shared by a lot of NFL guys as well. It's just, I really like, players that are going to be considered in the top 5, but in the past years, they would have gone much later. A lot of people like Will Johnson, corner from Michigan.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced he's better than Quinyon Mitchell, who was the first corner drafted last year at 22 overall by the Eagles. So it's one of those years where if I'm the Cowboys right now, I'm not focused on where I'm drafting because it's hard to really narrow it down and saying, well, if I at least get in the top 11, I feel good about the guy I'm going to get. Anywhere in that 8 to 14 range, I think that's the most realistic spot for this team.
Dane, it seems like, Voch and I have already been, we're one of those teams that's not focusing on the playoffs. We're a team that's focusing on your area of expertise in the draft. Dane, Voch and I seem to come to the realization that the one player that seems very consistent, maybe on people's boards early, is Abdul Carter from Penn State. It seems like to me, he's the guy. Now, we talk about Mikael Williams, and when you started talking about maybe, top 8 on somebody's board or 27th on somebody's board, Carter seems like to be the edge from Penn State as the one guy that might be that consensus guy that's there. But a lot of, with Williams, it could be anywhere. We talked about Dallas Turner, that kind of, where initially everybody was really, really high on Dallas Turner, and then the slide started to happen. Is that kind of the way you see things very early in this process?
Yeah, I mean, these pass rushers are interesting because there's a lot of talent, but in terms of proven commodities, these guys just they don't have that. All these Abdul Carter is a really explosive player, freaky guy, power. He's still figuring out how to play the position. I mean, he's an off-ball player up until this year. There's a lot to like about him and where he could be in 3 years from now, but it's still a projection because he's not, in terms of hand-to-hand sequencing and setting up blockers, understanding the best way to do it. Because in the NFL, it's not just about winning with speed. You have to set these moves up. And so I just think unless you get Travis Hunter or maybe one of these quarterbacks hit, I feel like whoever you take in the top 5 to 7, there's a good chance they don't look or end up playing like most players when they go that early, how you would expect them to play. But yeah, Mikel, I'm curious what his arm length is going to be, because he is a certified freak. I mean, he might be 36 inches. The way he plays, you watch the Texas tape and you're like, all right, yeah, top 10, sign me up.
Sure.
You watch most other tapes and it's like, okay, well, when's he going to do something? When's he going to show up? And part of that's the Georgia scheme. Part of that's an ankle issue that he's been dealing with. But again, it's almost like a Trevon Walker situation when he went number 1 to the Jaguars, despite not really having the impact of a number 1 overall pick. With Mikel, it's going to be a lot of projection with him as well. James Pierce at Tennessee.
Right.
I don't trust him as every down player right now, but he can bring the juice off the edge as a pass rusher. So, it's a little bit of a trade-off, but bottom line, these guys are talented. It's just, you have to have realistic expectations for what they're going to give you, especially in year 1.
So Dane, let me ask you this.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
When you're building your board, right? Let's just take those same guys that we just talked about, right? Mykel Williams he looks fantastic, right? But he's run down the middle of you guy. That's what I call him. He's a run down the middle of you guy. But James Pierce is a guy, Tennessee, he knows how to get sacks. Like, he's a sack getting dude, right? So if you're just like a casual eye guy, right, you would go for the sack getting dude, for the dude that you're going to bring to the league to get sacks. I know that's a lot of words there, right? So how do you balance when you building your board the upside of a guy versus I know exactly what he is and this is what he's going to do for me, and he's probably better at doing this than the upside guy. How do you rank that?
Yeah, and it's always the tough part, right? Because I mean, the biggest thing is you don't build a board based on what guys have done. You do it based off of what you project them to do. What are these guys going to look like next year, 2 years from now, down the road? I mean, that projection is everything. And with these pass rushers, with James Pierce, I think, he has a projectable body. There's a lot of things that say that he should be able to get better and better and better. But, there's still question marks from the coaching staff there saying, we don't really trust him on rundowns. We don't know if we can really trust him as an every down player. Why is he averaging 32 plays a game and not making, or not, we're not relying on him to make more of an impact? I mean, Pierce is a tough one. I think that, you can't argue with the disruption. His pressures the last 2 years, if you combine him, he's over 100 pressures the last 2 years combined. So he can get to the quarterback, like you said. But can you trust him to be out there as an every down player, or do you have to scheme around him now? And with Mikel, I think you're absolutely right. A down the middle type of guy. He's not someone that you're necessarily going to look at and, he's going to bend the edge and dip and all these things, but he can win with strength at the point of attack, gets his momentum, tilt the field, get going downhill. And for a guy that is still young and figuring out, you think, okay, with that projectable body, a guy that the football character is pretty strong, where is he going to be? And so that's, for me, I've got Mikel rated higher on my board than Pierce, but this is the part of the process where we start to figure these guys out as people. Right. Are they coachable? How do we feel about them learning and getting better? And that's, it's, if all we had to do is go on based off of the tape, scouting would be so much easier. Life would be so much easier if we just look at the tape and that's all we had to focus on. But at the same time, okay, James Pierce reminds me a little bit of Will McDonald, who felt like a reach when the Jets were drafting him 14th overall a couple years ago. And it looked like a reach last year as a rookie. He didn't look ready. He was a 0 in the run game. But this year he's got double-digit sacks. He's playing better. Now he's still some issues to figure out as a run defender, but he's figuring things out, and that's exactly what you want to see. So James Pierce, can he be a Will McDonald type? It's certainly one of the paths that's possible for him.
Dane, Voch and I have kind of dove into these defensive tackles, and I know
Cowboy great class, isn't it?
Fantastic. Yeah, Cowboy fans are terrified of them picking a defensive tackle. Talk them off the ledge about the Michigan kids.
I mean, are we helmet scouting? Is that what the big issue is?
That's what I'm saying. Voch is like, he's not helmet scouting. I don't think I am. And I'm trying to explain to our listeners that it's a different scheme. It's a different way that they play. Wink Martindale's techniques and stuff, the way that they play is different than what we've seen from Michigan teams in the past. but I think Dallas Cowboys fans are terrified of them taking any defensive tackle. But like you just said, I think this is one of the better classes that we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, defensive tackle is pretty loaded. And I think Mason Graham is the best of the group. He's a 5-sport guy in high school. You can tell he's a former wrestler, and because he naturally plays from a low position, so he consistently wins that leverage through contact. Not a long arm guy, and so that does worry me a little bit, especially when you put double teams on him. But he's so fluid. Just watch him against Ohio State over the weekend. I mean, he was just wrecking things. Ohio State stubbornly just kept running the ball right up the seam, and they just stopped it every time. He's twitching in his upper half, so that explosive nature that he has, he can get off blocks, be a factor, snap to snap. Watch the USC tape, and you can see him just bowl guys over and get pressures on the quarterback. He can 2-gap, he can cross the face of blockers. You see him, they'll work him on stunts. You see the agility with him looping and doing these different things. So, and this goes last year too, I watched that Rose Bowl tape from last year against Alabama, and it's more of the same stuff. So, I'm really excited for Mason Graham. I think he's no such thing as a safe player, right? But I think he has one of the higher floors in this draft, because even if he doesn't become a Pro Bowler, you're getting a really good starter that you're going to plug in the middle and feel like you know exactly what you're going to get from him week in, week out. But is he Quinnen Williams? No, but still, we're talking about in this draft class, he's easily one of the top 10 players in this draft. And if he's around for the Cowboys when they pick,
sure,
I think it'd be. There's a very good chance he'd be the best player on the board. I'm not even sure he makes it to where they're picking. Yeah.
Let me ask you this question then. Okay, with Kenneth Grant then, who plays next to him, if Dallas is picking, say, at 14, would Kenneth Grant be too rich at that spot?
Maybe a little, but I feel like I'm going to say this a lot, but in this class, like those 3 words, I'm going to be saying so much over the next 6 months. In this class, I could absolutely see him going that high, because you're talking about a 340 pounder who moves like he's about 280 pounds.
Right.
And he's still figuring things out. He doesn't play with maybe the same technique or know-how as Mason Graham, but man, he's a rangy big man, and he can work up and down the line of scrimmage. He's playing the piano up and down. Big man balance. He can give you a little bit of pass rush. He's got those swim moves, but he can clog things up. And so I get why, with Mozzie Smith and Taco Charles, I get why fans of the Cowboys are going to be a little apprehensive about another Michigan defensive lineman. But, these guys are different. And, if the Chiefs were scared of Texas Tech quarterbacks, then, obviously we know how that would have played out. So I would not let past Michigan defensive linemen stop me from drafting either one of these 2 guys. I think Kenneth Grant's going to be drafted somewhere in the top 25. So if you tell me he went 14, I don't think it'd be too early in this class.
Man, Dane, boy, me and Bryan Broaddus, boy, we had a colorful discussion a couple days ago, sir, about your 34th player there, since we're talking about tackles. And this may not be top 25 talk. This may be, I don't know where it's going to go. That's my point here. When Brian and I watch Dion Walker, 6'6", 345, Dane Brugler, man, we see him come off the line of scrimmage punching the hell out of people, man. We see him moving around all good. They line him up at edge. Sometimes he out there pass rush again. We say, woo! Look at Dion Walker, man. And sometimes Dane Brugler, we see him loafing. Sometimes we see him falling and lollygagging around. Sometimes we see him looking at the ref like, hey, man, he holding me. What you do? Dane, we have no clue what to do with Dion. So he come off the ball, he's standing straight up and getting mad that he's standing straight up. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. We don't know what to do with Dion Walker, right? Because my theory is, hey, man, look, nobody coached you to do this. You know what I'm saying? Nobody coached you to loaf like this. And he has some aggressive loafs, Dane Brugler, but sometimes he doesn't. I don't know what his off the field is. All me and Bryan Broaddus have is the film. You and the coaches will talk to him. Help me out with Dion Walker and just the rest of our audience, because they love him, Dane, they talk about him as he's a first-round pick. And I think he flashes first-round stuff sometimes. But then he loafs aggressively. So please help us out with Dion Walker from Kentucky, D-tackle.
Well, I think the biggest thing with him is he plays so many snaps. I mean, they ask him to play almost 60 snaps a game. And so a guy like that size, it's tough. I mean, we go back to Jordan Davis when he was at Georgia, they played him 25 snaps a game. You know, they kept him fresh, and that allowed him to have more of an impact. Even, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, they're playing, I think, just under 40 snaps a game. With Dion Walker, he's playing 50, 60. So that's part of it. I think that is, you give him a little bit of pass because he does fatigue, and that's just big men do that. But he's a guy that I think is just going out there and playing, because you're right. He pops straight up at the snap a lot of times, and you don't see a lot of thought or process or technique. It's just a lot of, I'm going to come barreling at the pocket and come and try to stop me. And, in SEC play, they can do that. And so, and they can especially do it at the next level in the NFL. So it's about, can you develop more of a thought process, more of a plan? So yeah, you have strength in your hands. Yeah, you have basketball footwork, because that's his background. He's a basketball player. That's really how he became an athlete, and you can kind of see it. He's got leaner legs for a guy that's that big. It's funny. He actually wears wide receiver cleats because they're a little bit lighter, and he likes to move around a lot. Can he streamline his pass rush? Can he be more efficient taking on blocks, getting off blocks? These are all things that I think is why he's not a lock first round pick. He's kind of right on that border. Like, maybe he sneaks in there, maybe he doesn't. But that a guy that can move like that at that size, you don't find him very often. So he's still right there in that top 40 mix, even if this season hasn't gone quite the way that I think a lot of teams were hoping it would go. So I've got my first mock draft of the year coming out tomorrow. And Dion Walker did not make it. He's just one of those guys that just missed it, didn't find a spot for him. But plenty of defensive tackles did. It's a really good class.
Dane, are we out of line saying that this offensive tackle class is not the same class that we saw last year?
Oh, it's not even in the same stratosphere. I mean, it's not even close. If Amarius Mims, who went like 18th last year, if he went back to Georgia for his senior year, he would be a lock top 5 pick this year. Easy top 5 pick. In this class,
is that the position that when you started doing your top 50, or you were stacking them the way you thought it, was the offensive tackle class hard for you to do?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And especially when I'm doing like a mock draft too, because there's so many teams that could use tackle help. And, you're looking around, it's like, well, I mean, is it a reach for them to take a tackle here? Well, again, those 3 words in this class, maybe not, because Will Campbell. All right, Mr. LSU. Will Campbell officially declared today. He's going to be in this draft class. I think the rest of those LSU juniors are going back. Nuss, Mason Taylor, and maybe Emory Jones. We'll see on him. But Will Campbell will be part of this draft. In my opinion, he's the best offensive lineman in this draft. But is he a tackle or is he a guard? What say you?
I think he could play tackle myself. I do. And, when I watch him play, I think I always talk about these offensive linemen, grade them 65 plays. I think there's some plays where he will struggle. And I think every offensive tackle, Dane, I'm going to tell you this. I think the kid at Ohio State, Josh Simmons, is a better player.
I agree.
Oh, I agree too. The thing with Simmons is the knee. That's
the knee. But I'm saying, if you gave me a choice of those guys, and this even goes back to Banks from Texas, I think Banks is more of a guard than Campbell. Agree. And if you gave me a choice between tackles, I'm taking Simmons, and I know the knee. I know that. Campbell, to me, is one of those guys that I appreciate all the the years he played. He's played in a ton of big games. Played a ton of snaps.
Yep.
But I've seen people break him down, but I think you could say that about all these tackles. I just feel like that Josh Simmons from Ohio State doesn't get broken down as much. And I wouldn't play Campbell at guard. I think he is a good athlete. I think the feet are good, and he put his feet save him in a lot of ways. But if I needed an offensive tackle in this draft, I would be a little bit nervous about it. Other than, like I say, but my best tackle has a knee injury. So
that's it. Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. I mean, Simmons was trending to being OT1 in this draft when he went down non-contact, patella. Like we're talking pretty serious injury.
Oh no, that's a very serious injury. But when
especially Taylor,
we drafted Aaron Taylor.
Like
We drafted Aaron Taylor out of Notre Dame, way back in the day, and patella, and that was not, he got hurt the very first OTA practice he was involved with, our post-draft practice. That's something that's a little bit difficult to deal with right there. So
and I don't want to say like he can't go first round or he can't be the first tackle draft. We just don't know enough about the knee right now to say anything definitively. But I agree with you. Based on the first month of the season, the way he was playing, he was trending to being OT1 in this class. I think he has that type of ability, really light mover, agile, the body control. The improvements he made from last year were really impressive, because I did not expect to be talking about Josh Simmons that way over the summer based on his 2023 tape. But credit to him, he made the necessary adjustments. And so now we wait and figure out, does he declare? Does he even part of this draft class?
Sure.
And then what's going on with the injury? How do we feel about it? It's just kind of an unknown at this point. But I agree with you on Kelvin Banks. I don't see, like, I never saw a top 10 with him. Even in this class, I never really saw that with him. To me, he's a good player. I mean, he really understands just his natural biomechanics. He understands what his strengths are, what his weaknesses are, and he plays to them. So I think he is a really smart player. I don't know. I don't see a guy that you would necessarily take top 10 and think you have your left tackle position figured out. But he's a good player. So I'm not trying to,
I think you got him absolutely right. If I could ask you about another injured player, is our East Carolina corner.
Yeah.
And Ravel. And I absolutely love the kid. Dr. Cooper, the Dallas Cowboys team doctor, did the surgery on him. Dr. Cooper's one of the best in the business for getting him right. Where does he fall into this whole mix of things? Because when I watched him play, I know people are talking about, Will Johnson at Michigan and all that.
Yeah.
I love this kid from East Carolina. And so do you have an idea? Maybe not yet, because we got to get to the combine and get through it. But do you have a place in your mind where he might go?
He made my first round mock that comes out. And I think, it's an ACL. And as long as the doctors say, hey, the rehab's going well, there's a clean tear, rehab, it's recovering well, it's a very good chance to still go top 25. Because again, in this class, to find a guy that freaky at 6'2.5", over 200 pounds, to move like he does. And he was having a great year before that injury. So, he was, and the character stuff that I've gotten back has all been strong. Like, he had a chance to transfer and get out of East Carolina. Teams knew who he was, but he stayed put, and, he really liked the coaching staff, really liked his teammates, all that kind of thing. So I still think he's got a great chance to go in the first round, as long as there's no worries long-term about that knee. And I mean, could he go ahead of Will Johnson? Sure. Why not? I mean, I think the big thing with Will Johnson is going to be, I'll put the over-under on his 40-yard dash at, 4.46.
Okay. I'm glad you said that.
He's not a burner. He's not. Nope. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't run. Because is it better to not run or put a 4.49 out there at corner? And that's not it's not going to kill you as a corner, but to go top 15, maybe it does for certain teams. We just don't see. It's rare for corners that are, say, outside of a 4.45 to go top 15. It's happened, but we're talking maybe you can count on one hand over the last 10 years. So, it'll be interesting with Will Johnson. He missed most of this year. It was a shoulder, then a toe. That's something that'll factor into everything. So another good player, right. But again, if he were in last year's class, he wouldn't be the slam dunk CB1. I think it would have been a really interesting debate between him or Quinyon Mitchell or even Terrion Arnold. So, it would have been a really interesting group of those three, and those two corners last year went in the 20s. So it's interesting.
No, Dane, we almost at the 30-minute mark here. I want to get one more in, which, if you don't mind, sir. Man, Cowboy Nation, man, they've been hearing me and Bryan Broaddus talk about this Ashton Jeanty character, man.
Here we go.
Heard boy,
about time you showed some balls and got this thing done there, Voch.
Boy, man. But I'm like, man, I don't think in good conscience.
Don't let him do this, Dane. Don't let him do this.
And look, I'm not even anti-running back guy. I'm Hall guy. I'm trying to get the Hall. If I can get McMillan and Caleb Johnson, I'm going to Golden Corral. You feel me? But anyway, you got 3 running backs in your.
Love Caleb Johnson, man.
He's a dog, ain't he? But you got 3 running backs in your top 50 here, Dane Brugler. If the Cowboy Nation and the rest of our followers are listening to us and they say, man, Voch, you a hater, why don't you want Ashton Jeanty in the first round? Can you convince them that there are some other running backs that are fantastic that'll go in day 2 and maybe even day 3 here?
Dane, would you also remind him that this kid might be better than Bijan Robinson?
He a bad boy, Brian. But I'm thinking about the Hall. I'm trying to get McMillan and somebody up in here. I'm trying to get
the Falcons don't have a winning record right now. Like, I mean,
it's not his fault. It is not his fault.
But I'm just saying, like it's
you're gonna blame Kyle
using
Pitts
a top
too?
10. What's that?
You're going to blame Kyle Pitts, too, there for the problems that the
No,
Falcons
I'm
have?
just saying, like, if they draft an Ashton Jeanty, all of a sudden this offense isn't magically fixed overnight. I agree.
Tell them.
There's no doubt. I mean, I'm trust me, Ashton Jeanty, I think Travis Hunter is the best player in the draft. Sure. You can make a strong argument that Genty's number 2. All right, like that's a very feasible way of looking at this draft.
Yeah.
But Dane, I think it's fascinating.
Dane, you're fascinating at this game you play now.
He's really good at it.
He is really good at this game. He is really good at this game. When you and I were working together, you were like fighting my ass over this stuff.
I'm fascinated when you look at the top 20 picks right now.
Sure.
There's not a single. I mean, you could say Dallas, but let's just take out Dallas for the moment. There's not a single other place in the top 20 where you're like, oh yeah, Jeanty, right, makes perfect sense. That's where he's going to go. And so I can't wait to see where Ashton Jeanty ends up going. Now, we said that about Bijan, and he ended up going 8.
Remember that night we were all talking about, hey, get ready for Dallas to pick Bijan Robinson at the bottom of the board. And then we even saw 2 running backs go top 12 because Detroit took Jahmyr Gibbs. So, I think I wouldn't be surprised if Caleb Johnson ends up going somewhere top 20 in this draft because he's the real deal. Okay. But yeah, with Jeanty, I don't think there's anything I can say that the people don't already know. I mean, just how special he is, how strong he is. I mean, if the biggest knock against him is his height, then I think, we're looking at the wrong things because his height helps make him such a special player. So, there's so as a person, like you talk to the coaches at Boise State and they'll tell you he has a halo on under his helmet. Like he is just like the greatest guy. Grew up in a military family with those types of values, big time, gave his life to God, that type of thing. He is an awesome person and player. But one of the reasons why I would be hesitant to draft a running back in the first round this year or top 20 is exactly how, Voch, you set it up. This running back class is loaded. It is running back is the best position this year, plain and simple. The best position, deepest. Now, I say that without, we don't know the juniors coming out yet, but assuming the juniors that we expect to come out do, this is going to be a loaded running back class. And it's going to start with Jeanty. He's the top guy. But, we've mentioned Caleb Johnson right after. Omarion Hampton's great. The 2 Ohio State kids. There's a lot of seniors in this group that are awesome. RJ Harvey from UCF is getting slept on, but he's awesome. He's that second round to 4th round mix we're going to have double-digit running backs drafted in that 2nd to 4th round.
And I think it's it's all going to be about preference. Do you want the pass catcher? Do you want the more power guy? Do you want the order is going to look different from team to team depending on what you need for your offense. But yeah, this is a stacked running back class, and that has to at least factor in to your decision making about whether or not to go Jeanty in the first round.
Yeah, it's really good for a team that doesn't have a 4th round pick, right? Not
think that'll be brought up at all over the next.
Watch that guy. Watch that guy on the other side of you, and watch what he and I talk about and we start. You and I live to talk about day 3 with you. I live for that.
The best, yeah.
Because we sat there and we slept on our boards, and we sat there and like, okay, who do you got on that board? And it was always a special time, day 3, to watch those picks come off, because you're like going, okay, now I got this thing wired, and we're gonna be sitting there eating turkey sandwiches and drinking Diet Pepsis because we're not gonna have a pick, right?
Yeah,
I mean, terrible.
Dane, I'm sorry, I got one more because we're not going to be able to talk to you until June. I got one more, I promise. I'm sorry. On 2 separate occasions, Bryan Broaddus on this show, it seemed like he almost came to tears when we were talking about wide receiver Luther Burden and wide receiver Ted McMillan. Can you just give my audience the rundown on those guys? I've seen Bryan take deep pauses talking about those guys because he loves them so much. I love them too. But can you just walk us through those guys? And even if you want to talk about, Travis Hunter as a wide receiver, what does he fit in as, wide receiver amongst those guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting group. Last year we had, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze, even Brian Thomas. These guys are a little bit different. With Ted, I don't think he's going to run great in the 40-yard dash. He's not the most polished route runner, but man, just give him a chance, and he's going to come down with the ball. His ball skills are just tremendous. His ability to high point, he always catches the ball away from his body. I've never seen the ball hit his chest. It's not how he operates. He doesn't know how. He catches everything with his hands. He's got this Gumby-ish adjustment ability, like this body control, where he will go up and get it. He can do a little bit after the catch, but again, he's not a speed type of guy. But when you're talking about 6'4.5", that type of flexibility and body control and adjustment, it's just he's a big time target that you just kind of throw it in his zip code and you feel pretty good that he's going to come down with it. And then with Burden, he's a little bit different too, because his whole thing is after the catch. You want to get the ball in his hands, let him go. He becomes like a running back after the catch. And so not the year that I think he wanted or a lot of people thought he was going to have. And I don't think that's going to necessarily knock him at all during the process, because as long as he tests the way we think he can at 212 pounds, he's still going to go somewhere in those top 15 picks. And I think both of these guys are going to be right there in the mix for where the Cowboys are picking. And I think you can make the argument that either of these two guys would make a lot of sense for what Dallas wants to be on offense, help take some of the pressure off CeeDee Lamb, help your quarterback, helps the run game, helps everybody. So, yeah, I think that both these guys are going to end up going top 15. I like Tet more just because, again, the ball skills are just that tremendous. Travis Hunter, he's just such a special athlete, and the ball skills, the instincts that he plays with are just awesome. He's a rare player. He's just plain and simple. And in my opinion, he's a corner who should get 20 snaps a game on offense. And that's how I would do it. That's how I see him. He's only 180 pounds.
See, we agree, Dane. We agree. See, me and Broaddus, we had this fight, right? Broaddus says that he's more of a wide receiver, maybe a sub-package corner guy, but I'm like, hey, just let that dude go lock somebody up and let him go play like flanker or something for like 20 plays. See me and Dane.
You're a smart man. Yes.
Let Dane tell you all about slight corners that play in these leagues.
Tell me about the slate receivers. I think it is.
That kid is a receiver.
He's special.
He really is.
Yeah, he really is.
The reasons he's great at corner are the same.
I don't want to be on your show
really
anymore. I don't want to be on your guys' shows anymore. I don't like you
That's
too.
False.
I don't.
You a damn lie.
Travis Hunter.
I was going to ask you that. I was going to ask you. No. I was going to ask you. You do see him as a corner then? You see him as a corner first and then a wide receiver?
I think it makes the most sense to get the most out of them because it's a lot easier to be a full-time corner and then you have 20 package plays worked in.
You haven't watched this team use Turpin or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? So when you start to talk about packages for this offense,
Ben Johnson will find a way to do it, Brian. Mike McCarthy won't, but Ben Johnson will.
I'm just a caveman in your world here. I'm so.
But the Cowboys aren't drafting Travis Hunter, so I don't even think we need to worry about that.
When you start to talk about, if you ever argue about Cowboys and packages, please stop.
Well,
right?
And we've never seen a player like this, right? I mean, in your experience, Brian,
Charles Woodson?
Bailey, they did it a little bit, but not a ton. And even Dion, he was more special teams and defense as opposed to offense. We've never seen a guy consistently be able to do both. Yeah. And I mean, if I'm like Travis Hunter, he's the character stuff is really strong with him because he cares about his fiance, football, and fishing. Like that's it. Like that's all he cares about. But I think once his agents get involved and the money people, like they're gonna want him to play both ways because they want him to be Shohei Ohtani. And I get it. More marketability. Right. I think he just wants to go out there and play ball. So I think he will be signing up for whatever team drafts him and whatever plan they have for him, but because he just wants to go out there and play ball. But it will be interesting to see how teams handle the situation with him wanting to play both ways.
It's been a pleasure, sir. Thank you very much.
Pleasure's mine.
You're never coming back again agreeing with him on stuff. I'll tell you that. I'm going to make sure that right and damn now.
He'll be back. I'll find him on Twitter or something. He'll be right back here surprised.
No, well, it won't be till June. I'll come back. We'll have another conversation here soon. All right.
Yeah, for sure.
I appreciate it. Hey, man, thank you so much. I mean, I'm so proud of you. I really, really am. I mean,
thank you.
You and I started in a little closet at Valley Ranch doing this stuff, and the beast and what it's grown to, and your work with the Athletic, bro. I'm telling you, I would hire you before I'd hire Voch if I had a team right now. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I don't trust Voch. But I trust you a lot. And so, hey, I love you, brother. Thanks for coming on with us again, man. Be well. Be well out
Thanks,
there.
boys. Hey, anytime, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, follow him at DP Brugler, and right there on the Athletic. He right there. Go get him. Go get him. Tap in with him, all right? And y'all follow me at VOCHLOMBRDI and BRYN Broaddus. We appreciate y'all for tuning in. Until next time, Crown.